Have you seen the shadow ghost hiding in the dark? Oh no, don't put ideas into my head. Have you seen the shadow ghost staying from the light? Have you seen the shadow ghost because she's been watching you? Stay in the light. Light room, light room, light room! Yeah, it doesn't like light. During my time here in YouTube, I have seen 3 new Resident Evil game releases, 2 of which I have made videos covering on them, and one that I'm still wondering how I should cover it without coming across like I'm copying someone else. And now we have the 4th one also released, that I just finished recently before starting to write this script. Resident Evil Requiem, aka the 9th mainline Resident Evil game, which came out in the 30th anniversary of the original PS1 Resident Evil game's release. And to say something first about it, it does its best to honor both its roots as well as the ways how the series has grown over the years, for better and for worse. But it does not have the fixed camera from the original games, not even for a few quick key moments as a nod to those original games. But on its own, Resident Evil Requiem is a competently enough divided survival horror and action horror game, starring the daughter of one of Resident Evil Outbreak's protagonists, Alyssa Ashcroft, Grace Ashcroft for the formerly mentioned half, and the series veteran Leon S. Kennedy for the latter half. The story and gameplay with Grace and Leon is divided into sections where, at least during my first time playing, Grace was played the most with before Leon was given a few shorter sections to catch up with her. Meaning that depending on how long it takes to play through Grace's sections, Leon's parts are going to feel like quick one and dones. Okay, for the next part I'm going to mostly focus on the gameplay with Grace and Leon with necessary story spoilers, but I won't get into the heavier spoilers until the video reaches the time code shown on the screen here. In the beginning, we have Grace as an office desk worker at FBI, who is sent unprofessionally by her boss to go examine a crime scene where her mother Alyssa was killed a few years earlier. Alone without any backup partners like anyone sensible would assume that they should, for not field-working junior agents like Grace.
The Redwood Hotel.
Yeah. I think you can tell that these were the graphics that they worked on the most.
I know that's where your mother was murdered. And I know it'll be upsetting for you.
Wouldn't that make it a conflict of interest?
Alyssa died 8 years ago. Perhaps it's time for you to face the past. Grace, force you to go. But do you think you can do this for me?
You are certainly not sending her alone. Send a veteran with her.
Investigate that
with
crime
backup.
scene and report back to me with your findings.
Like, does she not have a partner to work with? I understand most law enforcement have.
That's all for now.
Well, Leon didn't, but... Well, after getting through the necessary plot setup and other tension-building set pieces, Grace is found and overpowered by the game's marketed bad guy Victor Gideon, who then proceeds to take her to the first main set piece of the game. Leon S. Kennedy, who has been following leads to similar deaths as Grace, arrives to the scene when Victor Gideon walks out openly carrying Grace, and then casually starts a new zombie outbreak to slow Leon from catching up with him. So here when playing as Leon, he is about 3 decades older than in Resident Evil 2, and while he can still fight zombies coming his way, there is a noticeable weight in his movements where you should be able to feel how heavy each of his steps are. but otherwise shooting guns, fighting with the tomahawk axe, and eventually with a chainsaw here and there when Leon actually manages to pick one up from some zombies. Ai saa! What button do I need to press to pick it up? What button do I need to press to pick up this chainsaw? No niin, and another zombie picked it up! Why can't I pick up the chainsaw? Give me a good reason for it! Thank you! It's not bad compared to how Leon was played as previously from Resident Evil 4 remake, or canonically in Resident Evil 6, but that is its own issue. Then when moving to playing as Grace at Road Hill Chronic Care Center, the first main set piece of the game, that is where the survival horror starts properly with this thing that the game mostly just refers to as the girl. Also, compared to Leon's heavy running, Grace is not much faster and she is in the third person mode clumsier when running like Cindy Campbell from Scary Movie 1. Although she does get rid of that later in the game after getting more confident on herself, or that is just how I read from her body language. Anyway, first Grace needs to navigate her way around the girl so she can get herself out of this locked wing of the hospital, right on time for Leon to first find her in his next section, and puts the girl on the bench until later, before they get separated. Until the next playable Leon section, Grace is played to navigate herself around this place looking for 3 cube key parts to open the door leading to the backyard so she can escape from this horrible place. While looking for those, Grace also finds a young blind girl named Emily, whom she needs to escort to one of the 3 puzzles to get one of those cubes, because Grace doesn't know how to read Braille. But before that, the zombies roaming around this place are dangerous enough that Grace has to sneak past those she can, even when she manages to find a gun because they are just that durable. And because, just like in the 2002 remake of the original game, some of them actually come back as Crimson Heads, but not until Grace has gone for the second cube key part. There are also these 2 singer zombies who work like the witch from Left 4 Dead. This doesn't work, I'll try something else. And the Chunk Brothers. Eventually the girl comes back when Grace has taken Emily to unlock the 3rd puzzle, and takes her to the tunnels below the building. There is a Leon section before we get to play as Grace down there, during which we learn that he has the grown-up Sherry Birkin working as his mission control, and that they have both been infected with the T-virus, most likely from all the times they barely got bitten by the zombies in the previous games. This means I need to go back and play Resident Evil 6 where adult Sherry was last seen. Anyway, this is where I should comment more on Leon's combat gameplay, where, like I already said, he feels heavy moving around. He still has a quick and sharp trigger finger when fighting the zombies, which are now turning into those Crimson Head inspired Blister Head zombies. In this part, you should learn to shoot them down and hurry to finish them off with Leon's Tomahawk axe, as well as how using it makes it dull and needs to be sharpened to keep it as an effective weapon. Then back to those tunnels. There Grace has to dodge both the zombies and the girl, while trying to power up the cell door controls and the elevator so she could escape with Emily from down there. It is a lengthy process, and the most memorable part for me is when Grace had to survive long enough on a conveyor belt turning reanimating corpses into mincemeat. Sorry. Yeah, so hard to survive and endure. After escaping from the tunnels with Emily, Grace can open the door outside and meet the latest doomed helicopter pilot of this franchise, who needs her to go get the helicopter keys from the residence house. There Grace finds an Easter egg to Ari village before the key, and then has to climb a dirty water slide back to the helipad. And because this is a Resident Evil game, we all know how that helicopter ride is going to go down. It's not gonna be a long ride. On the plus side, we hopefully got to the other side of the building, where Leon's car is parked. Luckily, Grace and Emily's paths forward from that helicopter crash is covered in Leon's next playable section, where he gets a sniper rifle and then has a mini boss fight against a bloater from The Last of Us that can turn zombies around it into blister heads. Then Grace's next playable section has her finally defeat the girl in what can probably be called a stealth puzzle boss fight, where Grace needs to turn the power back on and open the roof to let the rising sun's light burn the girl away. No, I did not mention that the girl is weak against light earlier, but I am mentioning it now because it's relevant. After this segment, there will be a bigger and longer series of segments played as Leon in returning to Raccoon City after Grace is, while emotionally compromised, invited there by Victor Gideon and this other character who looks and is voiced by Wesker's new voice actor from Resident Evil 4 remake. Wesker?
I've been waiting for you, Grace.
Who are you?
Raccoon City.
Wait.
You're the reason for its destruction, but you're also the key to building a brave new world.
Yeah, that's the Wesker voice actor from 4 remake. So, in Raccoon City's ruins, Leon gets to fight a giant spider that was not in the remakes, another bloater, has an epic chainsaw fight with a zombie, and has to find detonator parts to get past a gate before having a, what people have been calling an RE6 section, riding a motorbike to the city center, where the ruins of the RPD are located. And that place is such an obvious reused asset from the RE2 remake that I wonder if the remakes were also made just so that this moment could happen and use footage from there as flashbacks. That also confirmed what I said in my previous RE2 and 3 video, how Leon A, Claire B is the true canon path. Before Leon also has a reunion with Mr.X, or another T-103 or 5 Tyrant, there is a lore-revealing flashback level played by a long-dead clone girl similar to Emily from before, which is genuinely scary the first time you play it as a defenseless child unable to fight back against those red-eyed girls from Nier/Drakengard. But if you know where to go and when, the next times you play through it can feel like a slow drag. Back to Mr.X. Leon actually gets a pretty good boss fight against him that shows how far Leon has come since RE2, followed by another boss-like fight against Plant 43, and eventually also against Hank, after having fought against other Umbrella Corps soldiers. Or at least I think that is Hank from the 4th Survivor campaign from the RE2 remake, since he is also shown suffering from the same symptoms as Leon and Sherry are. After some story progression, Grace becomes playable once again in needing to dodge lickers and what I assume to be older palehead zombies to learn of the 2 binary endings the game has. While doing that, Leon's symptoms begin to affect his gameplay in trying to reach Grace and the game's climax with the final boss. The two endings for the game are story heavy enough that I'm not going to say any more than that the bad ending is mostly just the worst case scenario of which does not even show much of its impact, like how Leon dies in it and how that mostly just showcases how it's not the canon ending. The good ending, on the other hand, sees Leon restored to his former prime, or to be in a better enough health to fight against Victor Gideon as the final boss, who in his second phase is revealed to be a Nemesis Gamma, and needs to be killed off by shooting at the red weak spots. Pro tip, use the shotgun for the weak spots close to each other like this, you will save ammunition better that way. And that is the game with mostly necessary spoilers. After this point, the rest of the video will be nothing but spoilers. First of all, having just Leon and Sherry as returning legacy characters from the previous games, alive I mean, because Alyssa was killed off in a flashback, and knowing that their last canonical appearances were in Resident Evil 6 for Sherry, and in the Death Island movie set before RE 7 for Leon, I cannot help but to wonder what the hell have they been doing between then and now, especially to the point of never bringing up or mentioning other characters who should be suffering from these same symptoms as them.
Leon, do you still think about what happened there?
Every day.
That night, I was just a kid. Scared and confused. I imagine Grace must feel the same right now. Sorry. This isn't the time. We need to focus.
Wonder how they're talking about Claire, because Sherry was here with Claire, so is Claire still working for TerraSave? What is TerraSave doing these days? Not to mention, if Sherry was cured from her G infection back in their RE2 remake, and RE6 still had her retain some healing capabilities, then what about Jill, whom we saw being cured from her T-virus infection in the RE3 remake? And what about the other characters who also survived from the Raccoon City incident, like Claire, Ada, Carlos, and is Nikolai confirmed to not be really dead after how RE3 remake ended? And what about Chris, Rebecca, and Barry from their Spencer Mansion experience, where they would have similarly caught the same infection from fighting zombies? Considering how Capcom has Jeff Shine, Nicole Tompkins, Lily Gao, and Stephanie Panicello currently cast as Chris/Carlos, Jill, Ada, and Claire, could they not have called any of them in to record some lines of dialogue to give some confirmation on how they are or are not dealing with this Raccoon City syndrome? Or use that text file method of showing emails or some of other forms of communications to give us some kind of situation report on their current status. These questions better age poorly when Resident Evil Requiem gets some DLC campaigns to address them. Not if, because it better be when. Leon's final cutscene and his concept art also show that he is wearing a ring on his left hand's ring finger, which would imply that he is married either to Ada or Claire or some random like Hannigan. Sherry is also shown wearing a ring in her pinky finger, which according to a quick Google search either means to be a fashion choice, a signet ring, or that you're a member of the Mafia. Do what you want with that information. Then there is the Teemu Wesker, as people are calling Zemo, who is said to be working with the connections that Mia Winters and Mother Miranda were working for/with, and who was also, probably, created to give Craig Burnatowski another game to get his Wesker performance legs to stretch, because until RE5 remake gets made for him to be killed off again, he would only have the Code Veronica and Resident Evil 0 remakes to play Wesker, assuming that Resident Evil 1 won't get a second remake treatment or a CGI movie retelling. Either way, Zeno was shocking when he first appeared, but the lack of characters who know Wesker to see him really made his presence feel moot. Victor Gideon was the better main antagonist, in writing mostly, because I don't want to make Craig Burnatowski and Anthony Byrne fight too much of a one-sided battle more than the game already did. Before saying any more about Grace herself and Angela Sant'Albano's performance, I want to get out of the way how she is ultimately revealed to be a placeholder for a password accessing an antiviral drug that Oswald Spencer created as his atonement for Umbrella causing the Raccoon City incident before Wesker killed him in Resident Evil 5. This antiviral drug called Elpis, named after the goddess of hope in the Greek mythology, is essentially that cure against zombies most zombie stories have as an unattainable goal to reach for, and it's shown to be working when taking away the Teemu Wesker's powers and curing Leon from his infection in the good ending. I would not say this was much of a retcon to Oswald Spencer's characterization, mostly because the only time we have seen him having one was in Resident Evil 5, right before Wesker killed him, but considering how this is the man who caused most of the events of Resident Evil by creating the Umbrella Corporation, which used children as guinea pigs, revealing that he was regretful and misunderstood does feel weird. Especially when the game tries to reframe the connections to be the real bad guys that Umbrella has been seen as, and were behind the bombing of Raccoon City and the assassination of the president in Resident Evil 6. But back to Grace. As a character who develops as the story goes forward, like when comparing her body language of the early game Grace and the later game Grace, we could have gotten worse in the current gaming climate where female protagonists can make or break upcoming video games depending on how they are written and performed. Having watched the behind the scenes video unlocked after finishing the game, I have not only seen how the cutscenes were created, but also Angela Sant'Albano's performance as Grace in different situations without the CGI mask on. Also, compared to some publicity images of her and Nick Apostolides promoting Resident Evil Requiem, in some of which she looks older than her character by the way, the behind the scenes footage creates the illusion of making her look closer to what I assume Grace is meant to be, and it makes me agree that she should be nominated for the best performance at the Game Awards. We are still early in the year and better game performances may come, but I have seen enough to salute her. Okay, this part of the review is written while I'm still editing the main video on thoughts and opinions that I didn't think of when I wrote the main script. Resident Evil Requiem having Grace and Leon wait for their own terms to be playable is not the same thing as Resident Evil 1 and its remake, or Resident Evil 6 with different campaigns. It comes across more similar to Code Veronica, which has Claire Redfield start the game and then has Chris playable following her. So pile that up with the other foreshadowings that Code Veronica is the next remake, but also a clearly wasted opportunity to have the game divided into separate campaigns for Grace and Leon, like how Resident Evil 1 has with Chris and Jill, and how Resident Evil 2 has with Leon and Claire. During that long section when playing as Leon in Raccoon City, there were multiple fade-outs where I expected to be switching up to Grace next, but that never happened until the late game. And then there is something else I thought when it comes to the remakes. When you really look at the differences between the events of the story, the remakes would be more accurate to be called reimaginations or rewrites. With Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3, those were unnecessary, unless you count the RE3 remake changing what kind of bombing was done to Raccoon City, so that revisiting it in this game made more sense, and to reuse the RE engine created assets of the RPD to re-explore its ruins. However, Resident Evil 0 and Code Veronica are those games which you could argue being the most anime of the series, and would need course correction via being remade and rewritten. Like with James Marcus controlling leeches to make leech zombies, complete with clothes that they are wearing, and believably setting up Rebecca for the events of Resident Evil 1, without having her be a strong character who needs Chris to save her from a hunter. Although personally I believe she was just too tired after having been awake for 2 days straight without any rest between games, but that's just my headcanon. Then there are Steve Burnside and Alfred Ashford, whose characterizations need to have all the cringe written out of them. Next we have Wesker's reintroduction there, which made me think again about how Zeno the Temu Wesker seemed to be a test drive for in this game. Zeno had similar powers to dodge bullets shot at him as Wesker was shown having in Resident Evil 5, but both times he was shown using them, he didn't use them in the same volume as Wesker did in his boss fights. The remake Wesker shown in RE4 Remake Separate Ways DLC also didn't showcase those powers, except in Mercenaries, meaning that Capcom may be toning down their earlier anime-esque portrayal of their characters with the upcoming remakes, but that is just me trying to utilize pattern recognition. We'll see what happens, but now to the end of the video. I guess that is all I have to say about Resident Evil Requiem, besides acknowledging that I'm going to need to replay it with what I know about its ending for that point of view, and for the standard classic and insanity difficulties. Now here's a test to see how many people watched this video to the end. If you have played through Resident Evil Requiem and managed to find Rebecca's basketball photo, write down in the comments how you believe it got taken based on how Rebecca is happily posing in it, and so appears to have consented to being photographed like this. Also like the video, check my channel for other videos I have made, subscribe for the other videos I'm working on next, and ding the bell to be alerted for the 3 times a week I do gaming streams. May your heart be your guiding key.